the Delmarva Almanac. Each week we connect you to the best of Delmarva. Like other almanacs, our aim is to tell you a little bit about our past, our present, and events in the near future. I'm your host, Dana Kester McCabe. In 1683, Oxford, Maryland was poised to become an important shipping center for the region. So Talbot County commissioned the establishment of a ferry to accommodate all those merchants who had begun businesses on either side of the Tredeavon River. Tredeavon is simply the way some Brits at the time pronounced Third Haven, which was a description of this river among several along the eastern Chesapeake Bay. By 1694, Oxford and what is now known as Annapolis were named the official ports of entry for colonial Maryland. By 1747, there were over 200 commercial sailing vessels registered to trade at the Customs House in Oxford. The ferry service was an important component of the busy little port, and except for a pause caused by the American Revolution, it has been running ever since. The current owners are Captains Tom and Judy Bixler. I talked to Judy about the ferry by phone recently, and she told me more about the history of the ferry.
The ferry itself became official in 1683 when the county asked Richard Royston, who was an innkeeper at that time, they would pay him in tobacco in order to continue to run a ferry service across the Tredeavon River. Royston was not the best of characters. There's many infamous stories about him, apparently. The ferry then was purchased by others, and over the course of the years, there were a number of women owners, which is very interesting. There was a Judith Bennett who actually went through 3 different husbands while she owned the ferry. In the early days, a lot of the ferries were, again, as I said, the innkeepers that were on either side of the river. The Robert Morris Inn started back in 1710, which is right adjacent to the ferry, and we're not really sure whether someone from there also was involved.
Ferry service was paused during the Revolution and was not revived until 1836, but it has been operating ever since. It is the longest-running family-owned ferry service in the country. During the 20th century, there were only 3 families that operated the service.
There was the Captain Bill Benson, who had the ferry for almost 38 years. And then the Clark family, Gilbert Clark, brought a ferry from Shelter Island. And he came in, that was in the 1970s, and then his daughter and son-in-law ran the ferry until we bought the ferry in 2001.
You're listening to the Delmarva Almanac. I'm Dana Kester McCabe, and we're talking to Captain Judy Bixler about the historic Oxford-Bellevue Ferry. The ferry has seen a variety of different kinds of boats, which have in turn been powered according to the technology of the day. The current ferry, made from steel, is the Talbot. It was built in 1980. It is 30 feet wide and 65 feet long. The ferry once served the commuting needs of residents in the area, but is now primarily a tourist attraction. The Bixlers have a lot of boating experience. Both are licensed captains. Tom had been a deckhand on a ferry in New York as a young man. Before owning the ferry service, the couple had a very demanding life running businesses that included a car dealership.
Stress of running that business was giving my husband ulcers, and he said, when we retire, this is what I really want to do. I'd like to own a ferry. So we retired early and looked for ferries all across the country, and we were lucky enough that the timing was right. The Bittners were looking to sell their ferry, and we bought it. We call it our fairy tale.
The ferry has been used for other purposes besides transporting travelers. Once a year, they allow a local charity to use the ferry as a fundraiser. It's been used to seed oyster beds on the river, to assist stranded or capsized boats, and even to transport fire trucks. The Bixlers also have had a lot of fun with special events on the ferry, such as trying to see how many cars they can get on board within their safe weight range. Captain Bill before them was able to fit 5 VW Bugs on his 3-car ferry. They had a good time outdoing that record.
It's normally a 9-car ferry. We decided that there were a number of Mini Coopers in town, and some of the gentlemen that Tom went to breakfast with challenged to see how many Mini Coopers we could get aboard. So one Sunday we actually had a little event, and all the Mini Coopers in town and a number of others all came down, and we actually got 18 Mini Coopers on the ferry. The 19th Mini Cooper came down the road. They thought they were just going to catch the ferry to go for a ride, and when they got there, they were number 19, and then we couldn't fit them on. So they we took a picture of them on the ramp and everybody else on the boat. So that was a lot of fun. It's a great business. We have a lot of fun. People say to us, don't you get bored just going back and forth? But trips are never the same. There's different folks on board. The river is different. There are different boats that we're out there waltzing with. There's different wildlife. I mean, we've seen dolphins in the river, which is quite unusual, but we have seen them, I think, 3 different times now in the 14 years that we've been here. The rockfish are jumping. The schools of bait fish come up and down. There's skates that swim around us. The osprey. There's eagles. It's always changing, and it's just an adventure. We love it.
The ferry is also a favorite of bicyclers. They come to see the charming towns of Oxford and Bellevue and ride the ferry as they tour around Talbot County. Visitors and residents sometimes bring their own cocktails down and ride the ferry back and forth on what they call the cocktail cruise. The Oxford-Bellevue Ferry runs every day from April to November. Find out more at oxfordferry.com. We'd like to thank our community partners, the Friends of Delmarva Public Radio, the Community Foundation of the Eastern Shore, and underwriters EatDrinkBuyArt.com for their help in bringing this program to you, our audience. Our theme music was provided by Brightside Studio. This show has been a Moonshell production. Thanks for listening. Until we meet again, may the rhythms and tides of Delmarva bring you good fortune.